Right now, I do want to take you out to this live look that we do have outside of the home of Nancy Guthrie as the search now enters day 10. We're, of course, talking about the mother of Today's Show co-host Savannah Guthrie. Take a look at some of these photos here on your screen as, again, we are now in day 10. The FBI saying it's not aware of any continued contact between the 84-year-old's kidnapper and her family. In a statement released right after the deadline in a ransom note passed on Monday night, the FBI wrote, quote, "The FBI is not aware of any continued communication between the Guthrie family and suspected kidnappers," end quote. Also on Monday night, Savannah Guthrie put out another plea on Instagram saying she believes her mother can feel all of the prayers coming in and is still out there somewhere.
We believe our mom is still out there. We need your help. Law enforcement is working tirelessly around the clock trying to bring her home, trying to find her. She was taken and we don't know where. And we need your help. If you see anything, if you hear anything, if there's anything at all that seems strange to you, that you report to law enforcement. We are at an hour of desperation, and we need your help.
Again, that was Savannah Guthrie posting that late yesterday on social media. Here's a look at some of the billboards that are now up all across the Tucson area and elsewhere at this point. A close family friend clarifying to Fox News that Nancy Guthrie was reported missing after she was expected at a friend's house to watch a church live stream on February 1st, as she did every Sunday. When she didn't show up, the friend contacted the 84-year-old's daughter, Annie, Savannah's sister, out of concern. 14 hours after Nancy Guthrie was known to have arrived home after dinner, law enforcement then alerted that she was missing. In the meantime, the Pima County, Arizona Sheriff's Office says it is pursuing, quote-unquote, new leads in the case, but that still no suspects or persons of interest have been identified. The sheriff adding no press briefings are scheduled in the near future unless there are any sort of significant developments that happen. Now, Mike Harrigan has more than 30 years of law enforcement experience, including as the chief of the FBI's firearms training program. He, of course, is following this as well and joins us now live to discuss all of the latest. Mike, thank you so much for being here with us.
Oh, thanks for having me, Josh.
Of course. And first off, I want to start by asking you, with your law enforcement experience, we're talking about decades there, explain to me what has kind of stood out to you about this investigation as it's played out over the last 10 days.
Well, it's been interesting to watch this investigation. You've seen it unfold on national TV. It's been great press coverage here, great publicity, which is key to these kind of cases, is keeping it alive and on the front burner of as many people across the country as possible in the hope of generating new leads and more information. So as we look at this, I mean, you do see a lack of information flowing from law enforcement to the press, to the American public, which to me indicates that they are working extremely hard behind the scenes and that they have a mountain of evidence and a mountain of leads that they're working through right now. And they have a tactic. There's a tactic here that we just can't know about and is likely based on what they've developed so far. They may have persons of interest, people they're focusing down on now, but for the integrity of the case, they have to keep that extremely close hold to the vest, especially the fact that there's a woman here, vulnerable woman, who's missing, who the ultimate hope is to get her home alive.
And you're looking at some of the video just seconds ago. We saw it there as they were searching what appeared to be maybe a septic tank there outside the home. Is that fairly standard? Because, again, we're talking, I want to say it was day 8 of the search when we saw that happen. So is that fairly standard?
Absolutely. And I think that points to the diligence and the expertise going on the investigative side. Because one trap you could fall into in these cases is assuming that something happened, a particular theme, such as that she was moved out of the area, or moved to another state, or she's being held at a remote location. The fact that they're continually checking close to the house and they check the septic system, that's good due diligence on their part. Because even though you may have a feeling or a thought or even information that she was moved out of the area, you can't discount the fact that she could have been left fairly close to that residence, or she could have been abandoned in the nearby terrain or other areas near there. So the fact they're doing that, I think, is outstanding.
And I want to take some of this video here once again that is coming into our newsroom. Of course, want you to pay very close attention to these photos of Nancy Guthrie that were posted by Savannah, her daughter there, on Facebook. Now, you kind of touched on this off the top, but when investigators have not publicly identified suspects or persons of interest there, does that definitely mean that they don't have someone in mind?
Absolutely not, Josh. I think what it means is there's two sides to that. Sometimes they don't have information to give out. In a case like this, it's more likely that they have actionable leads. They have an investigative direction that they're pursuing. And this is an extremely sensitive time in the case. Because again, on one side, you have a woman, vulnerable woman who's missing. And as time goes on, the threat to her life, just being away from her medicine, wherever she's being held, is extremely high. On the other side, you have individuals that may be involved with this, in which law enforcement has to gather the evidence to get to the probable cause threshold to make an arrest, make an apprehension, but they have to carefully balance that between the recovery of this woman, which is paramount, versus the building of evidence and the apprehension of who's responsible. You always want to, in a missing persons case like this or an active kidnapping case, you always want to, it's a priority of life. It's the life of the person that's missing is the priority. So everything, every tactic, every communication has to be focused on ensuring they don't endanger her or they don't in any way spur the kidnappers to do something very bad to her.
One thing that's been talked a lot about, these ransom notes that were sent to TMZ and to local media stations there. What stood out to you about what we know so far about what is in those ransom notes? But on that same note, how exactly do law enforcement officers go about essentially determining if a letter like that is legitimate?
That's a great question, Josh. And I think that's what is at the crux of this is when there's a communication in a kidnapping case, the investigators always, the number one thing is authenticate it. You have to make sure that that communication came from the actual kidnappers. And that takes a lot of work. And in today's technological world, well, that provides a lot of leads and a lot of avenues to investigate. There's also technology out there that can mask a person's identity, location from where they sent it, which takes time and extremely high level of expertise on law enforcement to try to figure out if that communication was authentic. Because one of the worst things you face here is that if you pay ransom to an individual who isn't the kidnapper out of a sense of desperation, then you're no better than where you started. No good comes of that. And unfortunately, what you see in a lot of these cases is you have individuals with ill intent, unstable individuals that may be looking for notoriety or looking to capitalize financially on the situation, and they send in something in the hope that somebody will send them money and then they'll disappear. So that's a very important focus here is to authenticate first, which is why in a lot of these cases you're going to see in dialogue with kidnappers is a proof of life, where the law enforcement is going to recommend to the family that we must have proof of life. We have to have some proof that they're alive before we go into further dialogue and potentially enter into a financial transaction with these kidnappers.
We know the FBI is now involved, so we're talking federal law enforcement. Initially, it was just the sheriff's office there in Pima County, Arizona. How does that kind of change the dynamic when you have a federal agency that moves in and is involved in the search?
That's a great question, Josh. I think one of the things you see on these cases is local agencies will work hand in hand with the FBI, and the FBI always comes into these cases in an assisting role. They defer to the primary investigative direction of the local agency and provide expertise, assistance, and if asked, they'll go ahead and even take the lead at times. But they got to be asked to do that. Now, one thing the Bureau brings to the table is the technical expertise, such as tracking down the authenticity of that note. They bring in high-level electronic surveillance and processing capabilities. They bring in analytical skills. that can help to take the investigators on the case, get them away from their desks and get them into the street, interviewing people, and prevent them from getting bogged down into a lot of the technical difficulties. And then one of the biggest resources they bring is the National Center for the Analysis of Violent Crime, the profiling units and the expertise there, where they bring in persons that have a particular expertise in analyzing notes and looking at the mindset of who wrote that note and looking at other information and giving investigators an idea on how to speak to the offender, how to communicate to the offender in an effective way. Again, focused on trying to get that person back, getting the victim back with their family. Because again, that's the whole focus here, is to try to get them recovered in relatively good health, hopefully, but they have to get them back. I mean, everything hinges on that, is getting that person back alive.
Definitely. And of course, Savannah Guthrie, her family, they're asking for prayers, hoping that someone out there in the community knows something, or maybe elsewhere. She says in the video, even people who are not in the state of Arizona, keep your eyes open. The videos there, the photos are circulating. So how important, how pivotal here is the public? A reward, tips, all of that. How pivotal is that in a case like this?
I think it's critical, Josh. I think what you're seeing is coverage like your show and other shows, keeping this story alive, keeping it on the front burner in American, in the minds of Americans is so important, because as time goes on, sometimes your biggest evidence is collected, your most, people closest to her, witnesses, they've all been interviewed. Now it's the obscure information. It's the Ring camera from a mile away that saw a vehicle crossing the path of the camera at 2 a.m. Those little things, it's really incumbent on citizens to come forward and say, hey, look, I had a vehicle that came by my house at 2 a.m. and I captured it on video. So we need people to really dig down and think and really look at the rhythm of life they have and look at things that are out of the ordinary that they may think are unimportant. But in the overall scheme of things, a lot of times people try to discount, it couldn't be that piece of information, it can't be anything. Is to send it in. Videos, information, statements, knowledge of people that interacted with Miss Guthrie over the last, weeks, months, days. It's very important for those people to come forward and share what they know, because they may not know that they have a key piece here. They think it's nothing, but when law enforcement looks at it, it could be the critical piece of a puzzle that could lead to success in this case.
See something, say something. That's what you always hear time and time again. Of course, it's important to note here there is a reward being offered, and the FBI, as well as local law enforcement, they're hoping that someone has that information that could help find Nancy Guthrie, as we are now once again in day 10 of this search. My last question for you here, we kind of talked about this a little bit off the top, but when you have the Pima County Sheriff's Office holding these news conferences, then they kind of stop holding them. We know that different agencies are involved here. How does the law enforcement essentially go about balancing the integrity of the case, making sure they don't mess that up in any way, but also keeping the public informed and making sure that information that is pivotal gets out there?
Oh, absolutely. That's a tough balance. There's an expertise in law enforcement that's become more at the forefront, especially among command level personnel within departments, is the importance of interacting with the public and the public information officers, and how you speak to the public and what information you put out. But that's a highly specialized area, and they have to continually balance that, because there is a need to know in the public. The public needs to feel that progress is being made, that those communities are safe, that there's not a threat to the community. I mean, really, it's extremely important. And what you see is, as they go through the decision-making process on how to release information, they're going to be talking to some experts in public affairs to figure out exactly how to speak in front of the camera, exactly what to say, what information to put out, and how to put it out. Because there's two sides to this. One is to keep the public informed, but the other side is subtle communications potentially with the individuals that took this one. Is they know that they're likely watching and listening to media releases, listening to statements. So they have to be cognizant of that, and they're going to try to leverage that to their advantage to get information out and to hopefully send a message and spur more communication with the kidnapper if possible. But in this case, it's a tough one because it has been quiet for a while, which tells me that the investigators really are working through a mountain of evidence, and that they're working down some investigative paths in which they're laser focused here, and hopefully those paths lead to the successful recovery of Miss Guthrie in good health and the reuniting of her with her family.
Definitely. Of course, we're all hoping, we're praying here that that does happen. Mike Harrigan, thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us. Anything we missed that you want to make sure we cover here before I let you go?
No, I think what you see here, last point I'd like to make was the fact that these kidnappings and, victims of crime, victims of crime every day, people are victimized across the country. This is a situation which you have a family suffering in front of the camera, and it's a reminder of how important our loved ones are to us, and how important safety and security in our own lives are important. And we have to look at that and really, we sympathize with Miss Guthrie and her family, not just because of the position she had in the media, and she's a well-known individual. It's just the humanity behind this, the suffering of a family who doesn't know. And you can't imagine the pain they're going through as they go day to day, not knowing what happened to their mother. So we're all praying for a successful outcome here.
Definitely. Mike, thank you so much for being here with us today. We definitely appreciate it.
Absolutely, Josh.